Do you ever feel like you don't belong? This month I had that experience. Our men's group at church actually had an evening where they had a lot of motorcycles and classic cars for the men to mill around and socialize with. But I don't know anything about cars, especially old cars, or anything about motorcycles. I felt completely out of place. I mean, all I could do walking around was say, wow, that's shiny. And I even saw people cleaning finger marks off of their car with a spray bottle. And one of the motorcycle owners, he cleans his motorcycle with Q-tips. Now, I only wash my old van occasionally if I can't see out the windows. So I'm just not a car or motorcycle guy. I really didn't fit in. But I still had a good time because I found a lot of other guys who were just like me. But I bet you've had some much more painful experiences where you felt like you didn't belong, particularly if you had been bullied as a child or were an outcast even from your family. These can create tremendous emotional pain, and Satan loves it. He wants you to feel like you don't belong because it creates such deep injuries to your personality and affects your relationships. And so he goes after us as children. He knows that that's when we're the most vulnerable. So he arranges events like bullying and being rejected so that we start to believe lies about ourselves and we feel that we're unlovable and no one wants us and that we're defective and there's something wrong with us, because that builds up a wound of shame and that fills our emotional baggage. Satan loves it because it can have such lifelong consequences, because then as adults, we still feel like we don't belong. And we have a very low self-esteem, very low self-acceptance, and we feel shame all the time, and that fills our emotional baggage and disrupts all of our relationships. So Satan is heavily invested in hurting you as a child because of the long-term damage it can create. So today I want to break those lies off of you. Today you need to start seeing yourself as God sees you, not the way that you have been seeing yourself. You see, you are God's son or daughter. You are an heir. You are royalty. You are seated with Christ. Nothing can separate you from God's love, and He's proud of you. And you need to start reminding yourself that that's who you really are. But I know some of you who heard me just say this say, oh yeah, that's fine for someone else, but I'm not like that. I am so defective and broken and I don't belong anywhere. And that's because you have deep wounds. And just because I told you not to think that way really doesn't change anything. So you need to give God permission to heal those wounds, empty them out of your baggage, and then you really can believe what He says about you. And here's the process of doing that. You need to ask God to show you, where did this problem start? Bring back a memory of where you were hurt, where you felt like an outcast, where you started to feel that kind of shame. Because at the time of those events, Satan fed you all kinds of lies about yourself that was lodged very deeply, lies that you were defective, no one loves you, and you're an outcast. So then ask God, what were the lies that you believed at the time of that injury that you're still carrying now? Then, more importantly, ask God, what's the truth? What's the truth about what happened in that event? But what's the truth about who you are? Who does He say you are? How does He feel about you? You need to know the truth, and you need to hear it right from Him. That means more than hearing it from me. And the next step is so important. You need to forgive the people who hurt you. Give them a gift they don't deserve. God forgave you, you can forgive them. And then ask God to remind you every time you go back to that old way of thinking, to remind you how He feels about you, to break the power of your old thinking pattern. So I want you to realize that you are not an outcast. You do belong in the kingdom. You have an important role to play, and God wants to lead you into that role. Don't forget that. Now I want to hear from you. What kinds of experiences have you had that made you feel like you didn't belong? And then how did God rescue you and bring you back to correct way of thinking? Just leave your testimony in the box below this video. And if this is your first visit here, you need to get my free self-assessment guide. And to do that, just subscribe to my weekly email newsletter, because there's a form on this page. And I'll talk to you again next week. But this week, ask God, where did I start feeling that I didn't belong?